welcome to yet another episode of Friday Night Chill with Will. I'm Will. Hope you guys have been having a good week. Hope you're having a good Friday. My week is only halfway done at the time of this recording, and it's been going alright. Can't complain. I've had a weird hair day. I forgot to wear a hat at work today, and if you haven't seen, we have a lot going on in the hair department right now, and it's not like great because there's not really much direction with it. We are growing out a mullet, but there is a little lack of shape and form right now. So hopefully I will be rectifying that this weekend, and we'll get some order back up in here. But for now, yeah, hats are my friend. But other than that, you know, we've been having a good week. It's been pretty easy, been pretty chill. Can't complain about that. And so for tonight's episode, we have a bit of a listener-submitted topic. This was submitted a few weeks ago, and I've mentioned I wanted to talk about it. I was just gonna wait a little bit, and so tonight's the night where we're gonna talk about it. And it's going to be about having resolve, or being, or standing firm. It was also wording that was used in the submission. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. I've delved into this topic slightly when I've told certain stories, because there were moments where it was just standing firm in what I thought and what I believed to be right. And, you know, it ultimately was for my benefit. And the thing about having resolve and standing firm in your decisions, sometimes I feel like I'm such a people pleaser that I don't have this ability, but then I look back on my life and I'm just like, no, you definitely do, because you do all kinds of stuff and you've made all kinds of choices that, you know, people tried to make you doubt those choices, but you stood by them, and ultimately it worked out for the best. One of the first ones I can always think of was when I left the church because my old youth pastor and his wife tried putting me in conversion therapy after I came out to them. Especially early on when I was, as a kid, going into my early adult years, I was, I wasn't as confident as I am today. And, I really tried to fit in. I tried to make sure I kept friends around, and that was super important to me. And a lot of my personal life outside of school and stuff was, the church. And so I really tried keeping the peace with some stuff, and I didn't really question a whole lot. And then when I started having a crush on my coworker, and I kind of came to grips with the reality of my queerness, and having that moment where I'm like, well, I got to make a choice here. It's very apparent the way they feel. And, I thought in that moment that, I don't know what I thought. I just remember needing to get it off my chest. And I remember just needing to verbalize it and needing to say it. Because I had said it once to one person before them. They weren't the first people I came out to. Thank God they weren't. Because that could have totally changed the entire trajectory of my coming out story. But I told them, and the reaction was just, I guess it was just disappointing, because I thought there might be some more grace in there, and there just wasn't. And it was, it was disappointing. I think it was ultimately what I was upset by. is just how disappointing it all was. And just a side tangent on this whole thing. This is more gossip, if anything. Um, that youth pastor that I had, his sister was a lesbian, and I always wondered like how that dynamic worked, because they ended up having kids, a couple kids. After I left, they had one already, but they had just had their first kid, pretty much when I left the church, and so I never really knew the kid like as a cognizant person. I just kind of knew them as a blob in the wife's arms, you know what I mean? And I always wondered like how that dynamic changed, and if they even have a relationship, because I knew he still talked to her and her girlfriend or wife or something. But I was always curious at how that dynamic played out in his own family, because it's just like, I don't know. It seemed fitting. It was just like, I'm kind of glad you have to confront this. It's not going to be me that has to make you do it. It's going to be, a choice you make one day, whether or not you care enough about your sister to, keep her in your life or not. But anyway, that's more of a side tangent, and that's more gossipy than anything. But yeah, I don't know. Whatever it is, it won't be for me, because the last thing I told him was to go fuck himself, because he tried reaching out to me a few years after that whole ordeal happened on Facebook. And yeah, I was like, you really have some kind of nerve. And yeah, I told him to go fuck himself. So that was pretty cool too. I was really proud of myself in that moment. But moving along, we'll just go over other instances where I've kind of like had a resolve. And one big one for me was quitting my job a few years ago after having a nervous breakdown. So, if you guys have been here a while, you remember the old show. I left in the middle of kind of the beginning of the third season. COVID happened. I went back to work pretty much right away. And, I spent like a month being furloughed, during lockdown, and went back to work way too early. I could have milked that whole thing way more for what it was worth. But I went back to work right away, and, they weren't having everyone come back, so everyone's kind of duties got shifted around. And then people started moving because remote work started becoming a thing. So people got other opportunities in other places, and people were transferring to different branches and stuff like that. And so I got moved around into a midday shift, and it was significantly more responsibility for not that much of a pay increase. And I was essentially being very much taken advantage of. And I kind of decided really early on, after having that nervous breakdown, that I wanted to quit, but I just wasn't sure how I was going to do it. And so I did it in a weird way where, like, in January of 2021, I just kind of made the choice in my head. I'm like, this is going to be the last year I'm working in this place. And I wasn't ready to do like a 2-week notice or anything like that. And so I just kind of like put a goal in mind for some reason that the end of June would be the right time. And so, I sat down with my bosses and I told them, hey, I don't like doing this anymore. I'm ready to leave. I'm going to leave at the end of June. I knew they wouldn't try and fire me or replace me right away, because hiring people was fucking complicated at that time, because it was still there was still a lot of I don't think vaccine mandates were even a thing yet. Everyone was still like wearing masks and stuff all the time. And so hiring new people was going to be a pain in the ass. And so I kind of knew they couldn't really retaliate against me if I gave them that kind of weird notice. So, gave them plenty of time to figure it out. I ended up training, someone I worked with to replace me. And I think as far as I know, he's still doing it to this day. Good for him. But, I just made that choice right then and there. And, I was struggling a little bit still. But once I made that choice, it was like a huge weight lifted off, because I essentially could see the light at the end of the tunnel, because I felt like for a long time, because I was at this job for a really long time. I was there for like almost 6 years. And so for a while, it just felt like aimless, and it felt like there was never going to be anything else other than this. And so when I made that decision, after having a nervous breakdown, essentially, I started to see the light. And that kind of that made the whole thing much more bearable. And I was able to, deal with it and cope way more. Now, after that whole time ended, in the weeks, months leading up to my last day, all my coworkers were always asking, because I told like one person, and then everyone knew. And so everyone started asking me, I was like, oh, did you find something else, or are you gonna be doing anything like right after? I'm like, no, probably not. I'll probably just take a minute off and figure it out. Because I knew I was getting vacation time cashed out and some sick time cashed out. Like all of the PTO that I hadn't used, I knew I was getting cashed out. So I had a bit of a buffer for myself. It wasn't like a severance package or anything like that. But I knew if I did my budgeting good, that I'd be able to finagle, some time away, which I thought was good, because I hadn't really had a break in like a really long time. I had been consistently working basically since I was 18 or 19, whenever I started working at the laser tag store. But I just thought this was like a cool opportunity, especially with what was happening at the time in the world, to just kind of like take a moment back, like take a step back and like just kind of like think about my well-being. And a lot of people were getting concerned. I think like my dad especially was getting very concerned and worried. And it's just like, it's gonna be fine. I'm gonna figure it out. Because if that were to happen now, I would understand the worry a little bit more, because the job market right now is definitely very shitty. And at the time, it wasn't great, but I think it was still better than what it is right now. Because right now, it's just a bunch of empty job listings for jobs that just don't actually exist. So that's fucking so much fun. I'm so glad that is where we're at right now. But yeah, I didn't want to look for a job right away, because I kind of made a decision early on. I was just like, it was probably like March, that following March, I was like, it'd be kind of cool if I like took a road trip and like just kind of used it as an opportunity to like drive to the East Coast and just see a bunch of stuff. And then my sister ended up getting involved, and I ended up flying her down here, and then we drove all over. We drove all throughout this country, made it to the East Coast. I had a friend and a stepsister and stepbrother that live out in New York. And so, we hung out with them. I met them for the first time, really, and hung out with them. And that was just like, it was such a cool experience to have, because especially at the time, I don't know, like things were scary. A lot of stuff has happened, and it's hard to keep up with it all. But it was just a weird time. It was still heavy COVID times, so a lot of people were wearing masks all the time and stuff, and it was a little bit different because social distancing was still a thing. But honestly, like, it was just, that was what was kind of nice about it. We were just kind of doing a thing where we didn't really need to be around a bunch of people all the time. We just kind of did our own thing, and it was such a cool experience. I ended up being so grateful for trusting myself that much, um, that whole experience got to happen, because I think a lot of good things ended up coming from that trip. My sister ended up moving in with me, and just kind of restarting life here. She was living in Idaho for way longer than she should have, and we kind of just made the choice of having her move in down here, and it's just been kind of us tackling stuff ever since, and that's been cool, because I've wanted her to have more experiences as a young adult, and I think there's more opportunities for her here, so I thought that was very important. And I trusted the choices I was making all along the way, and sometimes they seemed kind of rash and in the moment, but ultimately they ended up working out the best. And I think that's just really important, is just having resolve, is having a lot of trust in yourself and your ability to do stuff. And I think when you second guess a lot of your choices, that's where you can kind of get fucked up. One last little example I'll use was pivoting my YouTube channel to like content like this, where I wasn't specifically talking about Power Rangers all fucking day or every week or whatever. I was doing that stuff for over 10 years, on and off, but 10 years, regardless. And, it was a big shift to just decide, hey, I think I'm kind of done with this, especially like while I'm doing the new thing, like this thing, and just kind of making that choice as we, went along, that is just like, all right, we don't need to, like, we're going to have like Ranger related stuff that exists, but it's not going to be the focal point of the stuff I make anymore, like it has been. And, ultimately, I think that's worked to my benefit. I am enjoying what I do now. I was before, but the relationship with that thing has changed. And so being able to create sort of a new outlet that doesn't involve that thing, I think was really important for me to find and for me to do that, because for a long time I felt like so much of my personality was tied to this thing that I was into, and it's just, obviously you have personality quirks from, being a fan of it and enjoying it, and there's like jokes that you get that other people just don't get and stuff like that. But I unnecessarily put this tie between me and this thing as if we're like one being, and it's just like, no, everyone is way more multifaceted than that, and there are plenty of other things in the world to talk about, and you don't have to limit yourself to just like one thing, even if like you're really knowledgeable about it and you're, you have a lot of fun with it. You don't have to limit yourself, because there's plenty of room to speak on other things that you're not as knowledgeable about. So that way you can open up your mind to those other things and possibly learn more about those things that you don't know very much about. This kind of like goes into like being curious and, wanting to learn about stuff, which is important. I think, I think it's cool if you're really knowledgeable about one thing, because I've been that way. I'm still that way, about this thing. But I think it's equally as cool, and probably a little bit cooler, to be knowledgeable about a bunch of little things. And, I think that's valid, and that's kind of a more interesting way of going through life. Because, even if you know like one like little tidbit about something, you know it through and through, you're confident in it, and that's cool. I think that's important. I think more people should be willing to learn things. But a lot of people aren't, for some fucking reason. But alas, yeah. So that's just kind of what my piece is on sort of having resolve and standing firm in your thoughts. It all really boils down to trust for me, and trusting who I am and, what I want and what, how I want to get there, and that's not to say that standing firm means that you're always going to be right in those instances. Sometimes I've stood firm on a lot of things that ended up being wrong in retrospect. And I think it's important to realize that that possibility is going to happen. Just because you're learning and you're trying to figure everything out. And, we can be ignorant about stuff sometimes. We don't have all the information we need at the time. And ultimately, it causes us to, just kind of misspeak or make a semi-bad choice. The thing about bad choices is I always feel like there's a way to recover from them. Mostly. But, because the decisions and in those instances where it was bad, it sucked and it probably ruined some opportunities here and there, but it wasn't the end of everything. And life goes on and you figure out something else and, other opportunities come along. That's just kind of how that is. So, but anywho, that's all I got to say about all of this. So, just let me know your guys' experiences on standing firm, or I guess as the Gen Zs would probably say, standing on business, I suppose would be a way to say this. I'm half debating on using that as the episode title, but we'll see how froggy I'm feeling later on when I go to edit the episode. But anyway, thanks for listening tonight, you guys. If you want to follow me on other social media stuff, you can find me everywhere at Willie J. Co. Recently rejoined Snapchat. Still trying to get the hang of it. I do Instagram stories a lot. So trying to do that and Snapchat stories it's a lot. It's a lot. And I really hate repeating content, but sometimes I feel like that's the only way you can do stuff, because different people follow you on different things. But anyway, if you want to keep up with me on any of that shit, just you can follow one or all of them, or however you want to do that. You're an adult. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But yeah, follow me on all the things. If you liked the episode and you're on YouTube, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you are new here. If you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of the other podcast hosts, I would greatly appreciate if you would rate the podcast or review if that is an option for the thing you listen to this on. Those are always appreciated. And yeah, I think that will be it for this week, you guys. So thank you so much for listening in tonight. And I will see you next week for another Friday Night Chill.